Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm continuing our exploration of the Yemeni cultural scene. I have come across some short stories that I'd like to share and discuss with you guys today. Regarding the literary scene in the terms of literature and novellas, from what I've seen it is pretty scarce. It was pretty difficult to get my hands on the copies of the few books available in English, at least. Despite this, there are a few recurring key figures to note, such as Zayd Mutee Dammaj, who wrote The Bridge and the Hostage, Wahdi al-Ahdal, who wrote Land Without Jasmine, and Mohammad Abdul-Wali. If you'd like to dwell further into the Yemeni literature in your spare time, I'd recommend you to try these three. Although the selection is not huge, it is still plentiful for us to explore and grasp an understanding of the Yemeni culture and society. Most importantly because it is through their own eyes and words. The first set of short stories is found in an anthology named Oranges in the Sun, Short Stories from the Arabian Gulf, edited and translated by Deborah S. Akers and Abu Bakr al-Bagader. This book is a great resource as it provides us with a well-rounded glimpse into the lives of the inhabitant of the Gulf, their desires and values described in their own words. Although it is important to note that this book is translated, some things may have been lost in translation or the writing style may have changed. But I'm not here to discuss that, just mostly the themes and concepts. From the Yemeni section of this book, the first short story I'd like to talk about is called Trilling Cries of Joy by Ali Awab Badib. The story follows a man named Musan, who is reminiscing about how his mother would love to trill and her loud voice would echo throughout the village. Her voice was huge and husky. It echoed even after she was silent. Trilling, otherwise known as ululation, is a common practice in Yemen and other Arab countries, where women would heighten their voices and use their tongues back and forth to produce an echoed effect. These trills will be used to announce major life events, either celebrating new births, weddings, or funerals. His mother was so well renowned for her work that children sent by their parents would line up to ask his mother to come to their houses. With each time, his mother would jump at the opportunity to trill. From house to house, trilling day and night. His mother's trilling brought so much joy and happiness not only to those around her, but also to herself. Muhsin seems to go through the emotions as he looks back at how his mother's occupation interacted with his childhood. He seems embarrassed that he let the opinions of his father and his classmate affect his behavior towards his mother as he aged. For his father was irritated by the trilling and would always urge her against it, criticizing her by saying, "What kind of woman are you? You bark at every occasion like a donkey. Either trills or giggles, be reasonable, woman." While scolding her, his mother would stay silent, and as the children grew older, the sons, including Muhsin, would join the father in the scolding. However, his sister Saada would jump to the mother's side claiming, "So what? All women trill. Our mother is the best at it. I'm proud of her." And despite all the comments from his father, his mother would rush out the door as soon as there was a knock, where moments later her voice would reach us through the air, as it was a familiar reply to his father's reproaches. As for his classmates, Muhsin would often get into fights over comments about his mother's trills. He felt ashamed, mocked and jeered at by others, causing him to resent the return of pilgrims, summer holidays and the wedding season. Before the protagonist goes to study abroad, his mother makes a promise to trill at his wedding. While studying in Sudan, his father dies, and upon his return he finds out that his mother no longer trills but cries instead, claiming that her time for trilling is over. For Muhsin, life is now empty without the trills and joys of his mother echoing through the streets. The story ends in the present day. It is Muhsin's wedding, but his mother's already dead and buried alongside his father. His sister comes to trill in the place of the mother. The story ends with, she said, with tears in her eyes, "Our mother used to say that after she trilled at others' houses, when would I trill at my own children's wedding parties? She used to specify you by name, Muhsin, for you were her oldest." This is a powerful story that resonates with many, about a child's yearning for the parents present. The memories of our parents are often the strongest, and it is always the smallest thing that they do that once they're gone we regret not appreciating earlier. For Muhsin, it was the echoes of his mother's low and husky voice, her joy that radiated through her trilling. This emotional bond that is established by the author through his mother and to the audience tug at the heartstrings, especially when his mother's unfulfilled desire to trill at her son's wedding is revealed. The next story is called A Parting Shot by Mohammed Al-Baha. Personally, this is my second favorite on this list. It is a satirical short story about the changing of societal waves and the reaction of the older traditional generation. It starts with a man named Nu'man Saif reading the Friday morning newspaper to find an announcement with the name and the seal of the High Court of Aden attached. Not going into too much detail, Aden is a coastal city in the south of Yemen. Since 2015, it is a temporary capital of Yemen, a capital in exile, so to speak. His wife and the mother of his 5 children has filed for divorce for his absence and inability to support her and their family. Ironically, this announcement was brought to his attention by his current other wife. Nu'man is bewildered and is shocked that Saida, his wife, would be so bold to do this, since he was so sure that Saida is the type of woman who waits for her husband, the type of woman who does not replace her husband except by the grave. This is proven by the fact that Nu'man just assumes that he could return home and embrace Saida and the children and everything will be fine. Since he was always going to be tied to her because of their shared 5 children, she would be to him. There would be no other means of a support system for her either, as a divorced mother of 5 with no real means of providing for herself. This will be the case, at least in the Yemen he used to know. Through her letter to Nu'man, we find out the details of the relationship. He had travelled for work just like the countless Yemeni men who sought better opportunities abroad. Nu'man, just like many, left their wives and children for years on end, with the expectations to provide and send money for their families back home. But also like some, moved on and established new lives with a new wife and family, abandoning the previous one in the hopeless villages. Saida describes how the village has changed in his absence, as there appears to be running water and electricity readily available within homes. Women are now working. Just yesterday, they hired me at the government farm. The only requirement for working there was a diploma. Be free of illiteracy. It appears that women are encouraged to go study, at least to the basics of how to read and write. Not only has the village changed, but it's also apparent that she has too. The letter is the primary example of a drastic change and the representation of her new life. She appears to be bitter towards her husband and the situation he had left them in, as he ran away like a coward and a villain. She no longer confines herself to the boundaries that are originally drawn. I've lived for years, imprisoned between walls, first behind my husband's walls and then behind your walls. I've gotten older and bigger, but the walls did not grow. She had broken out of his grasp and taken life into her own hands. Although be it by lack of choice, this drive was always present. I used to look at a magazine and see photos and black ink, but deep inside, I steamed like a boiler, eager to read one word of it. I wish that you wouldn't bring newspapers home. You knew that I wouldn't understand a thing. She is now bolder, and now know how to use her words effectively, making sure that Nu'man couldn't simply return home, take her into his arms and kiss their children as if he's never done before in his life, and all things will be forgiven. If the letter and the divorce are not enough to cut ties with him, she has made sure to leave nothing for him to hold on to as a wager against her, as she has indoctrinated the children to hate him. He hasn't seen them for years. The children are now grown and school students, so Nu'man wouldn't be able to recognize them, or frankly, would the kids even remember him? She made sure to remind them that the reason why they wear old and worn out clothes, why there is no Eid money, and why the money has stopped is because of the father, the villain. Granted, not the healthiest way of dealing with divorce, but I will allow it. Nu'man goes through the emotions. He seems to blame everything except for himself for the words that he's reading. Throughout the reading of the letter, he comments how could she do this to him? Why didn't she wait for his decision? If I was there, I would have taken her head off her body. She didn't used to think this way. He acts as if he still has agency or authority over her. Traditionally, yes, because he is a husband, he is her male representation. But at this point, he has failed to fulfill his duties by neglecting his family, and it is revealed that he does have lots of money, but it's for alcohol and other women. So he's lost all that authority, and it's not just hearsay and anti-religious sentiment or shameless nonsense, so he claims. It's just the changing of the tides, and also the consequences of his negligence, to be fair. Nu'man struggles to deal with the reality of things. His pride has been wounded deeply. He got divorced from and called out for being a neglectful father and husband. Most specifically, publicly. Ironically, Saida says that women used to be a shame for the family. Maybe the shame that he feels is because it's brought on by her publicly shaming him. But anyway, who's to say, maybe he shouldn't have brought home that darn newspaper. Who would have known it meant anything to her in the first place? The final short story from Oranges in the Sun is my favourite, for it is extremely powerful and speaks of a lost society. Looking at this retrospectively, the audience know the unspoken context woven between the lines. The story is called Bus Number 99. It follows a set of passengers on a long-haul bus ride between cities. There are 3 key characters: a young man with a briefcase named Samir, a grandmother and her 10-year-old grandson. The grandson recognizes the young man to be his uncle Samir, and the grandmother confirms that this man is her son. Years ago, he had left home for a mysterious destination, and since then he has appeared and disappeared many times, stating that he was in Afghanistan and then in Bosnia with his brothers. In an attempt to contextualize the significance of this, Abdul-Wali indicates that Samir is associated with an Islamist rebel group, known collectively as the Mujahideen, who played significant roles in the reconstructing of the political landscape in both the Soviet-Afghan War in the late 80s and the Bosnian War in the 90s. Members of these groups were volunteers from many countries that were unified by their anti-communist and pro-Islamic goals, which they performed terrorist acts and violence to get the message across. After some time on the road, the young man checks his watch and urges the driver to stop. He claims that he's forgotten something, and once off the bus, he walks away in a hurry. A passenger notices that he's left his briefcase behind. The grandmother and the grandson offer to take the briefcase for him. The grandmother notes that there is a heavy ticking sound from within that has stopped as quickly as it began. Outside the bus, the young man looks at his watch with a strange smile. then covers his ears in anticipation. However, nothing happens. But it is important to note that for the first time, he had failed. The briefcase had been soldered shut, so the grandmother and the grandson won't be able to see inside until they get home. The last line of the story is, the bus moved and the grandmother embraced the case as if she was embracing her son. This story leaves you shocked and speechless, at least for me. It was a very oh no moment, especially when you realize that it was possibly a bomb inside the briefcase and that Samir had done it before, many times before, and succeeded. This speaks to the ethical clash between the unfortunate innocent victims who are harmed in these kind of conflicts that are meant to get the attention of global political leaders. Even if the young man wasn't Samir and just looked a lot like him, he is a representation of the many young Yemeni men during this turbulent time who found it easy to turn to the Islamic Brotherhood. This story depicts a lost and divided society, one that is extremely confused and torn. The next set of stories is from a collection of the prominent Yemeni author Mohammad Abdul-Wali. The collection, They Die Strangers, edited by Bagader and Deborah Akers, consists of many stories that reflect the difficult political conditions present in Yemen in the 1950s and 60s. Abdul-Wali's stories are intimate and powerful, as they're filled with the sweetness of nostalgia, but also with the bitterness of an identity crisis. Granted, a lot of this is heavily motivated by his own identity crisis, as he was born in Ethiopia to a Yemeni father and Ethiopian mother. But he also manages to link this identity crisis to a national level. The 1900s were a turbulent time for Yemen, with many local and international forces trying to grab control. With the revolutions and new republics being established and changing conflicting political ideologies. This political instability left ordinary citizens to make do with the scars left behind, leaving them ideologically lost in the grand scheme of things. Everything that they knew before as commonly understood as accepted values and ideologies had seemed to be drastically changed, especially within a short period of time. Brother, Are You Going to Fight Them All? Is the next short story, and it's about a rude awakening and misunderstandings. The story starts with a seemingly simple grocer named Farid Ali Said trying to take advantage of a quiet morning to himself, away from the children's noise and play and away from work. He hears a repetitive knock at his door, which gets progressively stronger. At his door is a soldier. He is described to be barefooted and to have a gun slung over his shoulder. His sarong short as a miniskirt and turban as high as the sky. Abdul-Wali's detailed attention to clothing is significant, as it is a key indicator of tribal and societal position within Yemen. The saying, "you are what you wear," is certainly descriptive of traditional Yemeni attire. What I mean, things like the style of headgear to the position and appearance of the dagger are also important in linking a man to a tribe, region, and socio-economic position. The traditional tribal dress usually consists of a futta, which is a wraparound skirt, a hand-woven turban, and a jambiya, which is a ceremonial dagger. The dagger is worn upright and center, and usually kept in place by a leather or cloth belt. So, in this context, the soldier has refashioned the traditional attire and even replacing the jambiya with a more modern alternative that immediately signifies position and power: the gun. The soldier demands that he must go with him to the police station. After asking for an explanation for his sudden request, the soldier becomes increasingly aggressive. Our protagonist slams the door in the soldier's face. This time, the soldier begins to knock more intensively, shouting, "This man is cursing the government, humiliating the government representative. Everyone bear witness. He slammed the door in the face of the government," and all of this commotion prompts a crowd of children and curious neighbors to gather. After our protagonist opens the door, he is dragged by the collar, prompting people to intervene, trying to find a solution without even knowing what was going on. In all of this confusion, people were begging the soldier to be nice to him, but also begging Farid to cooperate. His friends managed to persuade him to go with the officer to the station. If he's done nothing wrong, then he's nothing to fear. Still, this was all without any explanation to why. At the station, he's handed around like a toy being passed from officer to officer until they meet a proper official. The soldier claims that Farid had refused his summons and cursed, calling the government bad names and humiliating him. Angry, the officer asked for Farid to be handcuffed and imprisoned. After some protesting from the neighbors who accompanied the soldier and Farid, either in good faith or for pure entertainment. Finally, after some much-needed communication, it is revealed that the man they were looking for was named Farid Said Ali, the butcher, who was apparently selling beef and was claiming it was veal. Our protagonist, Farid Ali Said, the grocer, is released. However, he must pay the fee for the inconvenience of the soldier bringing him into the station and imprisoning him. The story ends with a powerful sentence. "I tried to say something, but one of my neighbors pushed me and another whispered in my ear, 'Brother, are you going to fight them all? Or are you going to let God look after you?'" It is a comical commentary on how pathetic and useless the officials appear to be, and how easy it is for things to slip through the cracks, allowing for mistakes like this to happen, such as paying for your own arrest and mistaken identity. Ya Kabir is the next story on my list. The story follows a lawyer on his way home after a few days of working hard in the city. His walk is long, and he's soon accompanied by a soldier who's heading in the same direction. The soldier calls the lawyer Ya Kabir as a sign of respect for addressing someone older and typically highly educated. The lawyer is uncomfortable with his new companion as he detests soldiers since they don't have a good reputation. They have managed to instill a sense of fear in the local communities by committing brutal and savage acts of violence, leaving them to be untrustworthy in the eyes of the locals. The lawyer begins to wonder if the soldier plans to attack or even kill him, as the soldier would assume that he'd gain some kind of financial benefit. Moreover, since it's just the two of them alone on this long journey through the mountains away from any houses, what would prevent him from doing so? There was no one to see them. The road was deserted. The lawyer is clearly intimidated by the soldier, as he is described to be tall with broad shoulders and a sense of tribal manliness. He swung his gun like a feather, looking as if he can carry the mountain on those shoulders. The soldier opens the discussion about judicial injustice and corruption by criticizing, "You take 100 or 200 riyals and pour them into the mouth of these fat bellies like bottomless pits. Well, our stomachs are empty, right?" This catches the lawyer off guard, not only because this is criticism towards his profession, but for it is the citizens who saw the soldiers as a force of oppression and injustice. The soldier continues to explain his frustrations, as the sheikhs took their land, resulting in the local men becoming soldiers to simply earn a living. He complains that there is nothing but greed, looting and envy, and he hopes that his children become educated, and not like ignorant soldiers like he is. However, the only option that they have is a local fellow, a religious teacher. And for the soldier, these people are worse than the government, as they corrupt this world with their lies. Soon the two men stop for evening prayer, with the soldier joking, "Don't tell anyone that I forced you to pray at gunpoint." The two men laugh, and when they reach the lawyer's village, he invites his new friend to stay the night and for him to continue his journey in the morning. The soldier has managed to prove to the lawyer that not all soldiers are greedy and power-hungry fools who simply take advantage and abuse their power. The problem is blatantly more complex than it appears, as there is two sides to every coin. The final story is The Land Selma. It is written from the perspective of a woman called Selma talking to herself. Selma has been abandoned by her husband and she's not seen or heard from him in years, and she contemplates her past, present and future on a quiet morning overlooking her family's farm. We learn that Selma is 26 years old, married 10 years ago, and she's been waiting for her husband for the last 5, ongoing 6. Her husband's absence wasn't a cause for concern earlier because it was the custom within her village for the husbands to go abroad for better job opportunities and send money back monthly, whilst the women stay and raise the children. She looks back at the daily lives and responsibilities she acquired after marriage, such as working the land, milking the cows, baking bread daily to maintain a household. You lay down near midnight, dead tired, and wake up at the dawn prayer call to work again, until you were exhausted. This has been your life, every day. Has there been anything new in the last 10 years? This repetitive routine is not something new to her, as it was the same lifestyle at her father's. Nothing had changed except for her boss. She blames herself as she sought after the finer things in life, like new dresses and presents that usually husbands brought back, so she encouraged him to leave for work. This is because she thought she would be different from all the other wives whose husbands went away and moved on with a new wife and family, leaving a wife to wither away who still waits for his return. No matter how much she ponders, she'll never truly know if her husband's left her. The truth is unknown, as it is there overseas with her husband. However, she cannot truly move on either. The option of being with another man or divorce is simply out of the question. The scandal would follow her with whispers, and with her father dead, there's no one who can support her. A woman in her position does not have the right to love whom she wants, nor enjoy her youth. She is now a mere servant of her husband's family, of her husband's father, of her husband's son, and of his land. The voice encourages her to think about her future, especially on the land, as it is her land. This land that she gave her life for, her youth, her blood. To quote, "Your land is where you've poured your sweat for years. How could you leave your land and for whom?" The voice encourages her to teach her son to stay and love the land, work it and nourish it, just like she does. The story ends with her deciding to teach her son to stay and love the land, to work it and nourish it just like she does, to not just abandon it just like the fathers have, that there is beauty in investing in loving the land, and to not be just like the many men who leave the land, their wives and sons, for something better, leaving their country and countrymen to suffer in anguish. And if everyone were to leave, he would be left to work it. There is a common theme of helplessness that is genuinely present in the 6 short stories I have discussed today. Each story consists of a protagonist who feels culturally confused and who seems to question the order of society. For instance, like The Land Selma and A Parting Shot, these stories consist of characters questioning and standing up against the inequalities that the cultures and society has historically built on. Also, A Parting Shot consists of a protagonist who struggles to deal with the culture shock with how much things have changed, not knowing how to address the very obvious societal changes that have drastically altered the general public's views, ideologies, and priorities. And stories like Brother, Are You Gonna Fight Them All, Bus Number 99, and Ya Kabir is more of a general commentary of the state of the country where everyone is left to suffer aimlessly. Nonetheless, these stories are written by passionate authors who hope to see a united Yemen sometime in the future.